Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on April 30th, 2022 at approximately 6:52 a.m. PST. Just about missed that one. Anyway, we've got a fair chunk going on, but since I hadn't quite decided which way to go with things, let's just see if I can put something here. We are looking at this point, we are looking at the backbone of the house. In other words, how do you get your house in order? What steps are necessary? That sort of thing. That's the backbone of the home. What were we looking at in the way of the house? This is what we have when we start dealing with different issues. Okay, with different aspects. I have a tendency of making notes and then getting myself lost. This is why I strongly recommend, and this really is a question of unlike what I do. Today I've got a couple emails that have to be done, the journey and the post. Right now, just double checking to see if I had actually touched on something. Well, what happens, okay, in a nutshell. Well, this is a little scattered today, but what the heck. Okay, in a nutshell, if you're going to, the list process works. Problem is the tidy up afterwards. If you don't get rid of the list, you've got to have, again, it's a question of organizing your head. Organizing, if you will, the cerebral cortex of the house at home. The third step in the third leg of keeping things in order. Now, what I've taken to doing here, okay, and this really is a case of a work in progress. Okay, because of the fact I'm still stuck in the Dark Ages. Well, not quite. I'd be using a whole different form. But do my list and then put the new date down. Okay. So, in this case, I've got a couple emails I have to answer as soon as I get done the journey. I've got the journey to do, and I've got to post it. Okay. Now, because I won't be doing anything else until the journey is posted, I'll have 3 things on the list beyond that. Not the least of which is my call sheet from last night. Because last night I worked. And of course, with my work, there's paperwork involved, like with virtually everybody's work. Okay, it's just a question of staying on top of it. So I keep this sheet handy so that I can actually get things dealt with. Okay, with that in mind, okay, this is the other little project that I'm working on. This funny little book right here. And hopefully I won't screw something up with this. But this little book, this is the one that I'm doing all my writing, the hard copy writing for the Yldrbac Chronicles. Now let's just pray I don't shut this off. No, it's still working. Okay. So again, that's being transferred. That's where I do my hard copy, my hard copy writing for this book here. Okay, this is a major project. Now, it is, it falls under the category of what I do for me, of the stuff I enjoy doing. This is just one aspect of it. Okay. Now, every book that I've got, as you can see, when I'm talking about the work I'm doing there, it boils down to, this is what I've got. It's part of what I do when I'm on my own. It's part of what I'm doing for education and for career. People have asked me about a number of different aspects. Now, today, just to give you an idea where things are going, because on top of recording the journey, I finally found a name that works as far as I'm concerned when referring to what I do on live stream. Okay. So what I've decided to do, and this may only be temporary, but it's likely to stay put because of the way it works. Okay, where it comes to figuring out who you are, what you're content with, what your house is going to operate and look like. It really boils down to figuring out who you are, or in this case, remembering who you are. Now, I was going to be on what I've literally decided to call the live stream, for purposes of just letting people know what I'm up to. Is I'm going to be titling it "Remembering Yourself," because, and I was going to be talking about soulmates today, and just exactly how they all fit, because there really is there's a major misconception from my experience of what a soulmate is, how they find each other, how they came to be in the first place. Okay, and I've got to do prep work for that. But because of a question that I had never been asked by anybody before, okay, and if you join me between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. this morning, and 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. tomorrow, I will be going live on Remembering Yourself to talk about what happens when hybrids start to mature. Okay, when they're at a point where they can learn who and what they are. I will be discussing that on Remembering Yourself this morning and tomorrow evening. I'll answer any other topics come in at the same time as far as I can, but that's where the backbone's going to sit. So if you've got questions, absolutely join me and ask away. But remember, when you get into the chat room, and post your questions in all capitals so I can find them. Now, with this in mind, okay, the thing I ended up having to look at today was how do we get started on a solid project? And of course, I've got things here that I don't require in the way, but that's okay. I got a whole bunch of things that I have to do, and I'm almost tempted to write. Well, I am tempted to write them down, but that doesn't work, it seems. What happens is I've got so many things that have to be done. One, and you may be going through the same thing. One thing that I do find is rather beneficial. Keep the list short. You'll always have something you can put on it right away afterwards. I don't know about you, but I got about 15 or 20 things stuck in my head from parts of my house that I've got to get tidied up, that I've got to get the clutter out of the way, or that I simply have to put a box of stuff away that I already know about. Okay. And this is why I said you keep your tasks to 15 minutes to half an hour in length. That way you can check them off. You can check them off as they get done and add another one to the bottom list. You won't run into any shortage of things that you've got to do. Okay. Because like I said, I don't know about you, but I've got a good 15, 20 things right off the top of my head that have to be done. Not the least of which is I've got to transfer a lot of information from my hard copy to my soft copy. Okay, once I've done that, I've got other steps that have to be taken. Now, if you put a project on hold, okay, I've talked about getting the brain of your house in order. Okay, and to that end, this, I think you can see it. No, you can't. Okay, I've got a stack of paper and what have you, of filing that I have to do. That's probably that thick. Now, it's going to take me a few days to go through it because because of the amount of it, what I've decided is if I can get 5 pages at a time cleared off the deck, I will get through it. But it literally boils down to doing things one step at a time. Okay. Where it comes to copying soft copy to hard copy to soft copy, I'm looking at sitting down and typing for a half an hour. Then I'll take a break, go do something else, and come back to it. Or come back to something else. But you get the idea. Stagger your big jobs in small things, but don't. The one caution that I found is that if you're aiming at getting a big job done, and you just break it down into small tasks. For me, it can get a little overwhelming. Not overwhelming, it can get a little monotonous, if you will. Now, if you've gone to university, if you've gone to college, and you've gone to listening to a seminar, most of the time, those seminars only run an hour to an hour and a half. Okay, and the reason for that is because people's brain seem to get they get worn out working on the same thing time and again. If you're one of these people that has multiple things that you really desire to get done, you may find your stamina is not quite so strong. And this is just a theory I'm working on for myself for the moment. It's something that dawned on me because of the fact that I wasn't getting up and mobile. I'd sit in my office for, hours. And then I get distracted because my brain went too much trying to do the writing. And when you're trying to write I think it's 32 books, and I still have to do that. That's one of those things I've got to work out. But just quickly, I've got 10 of the Believe in Your series. I've got another 10 books in the Yldrbacian Chronicles. There's 20. Then I've got two children's books, and a second volume of a manual that I've got to get finished. And so we're up to 23 there. Then I've got a book that I'm working on how to make your money actually work. Okay. Which is 24. And a book on how to make it work and how to track it. Okay, then I've got one on a universal formula for success. So right there, without even working at it, I'm at 24, 25, lost count. 25 books I can think of right offhand. Okay. Oh yes, and the channeled autobiography that I wrote, that is way down the list on the ones to get to print. Okay. So I'm looking at 25 without even working at it. And I know I've got other projects I'm working on. Okay. A couple of the much bigger ones that I'm working on. This gives you an idea how this brain cell of mine in my home and in my house works. These are all subjects that I am versed in. Okay. That I'm doing my best, like these two. But that was gravity. This one here. Believe in yourself and follow your dreams. This is the backbone to getting yourself organized. Okay. And I figure if I can put these books together in small form, when I put them together in small form, it means that people can simply go, I'm looking for this information from your library. Where, how do I go about getting it? Now, how I'm going to do that is anybody's guess at this point. Okay. So, from my standpoint, and this is another concept that came to mind here, is when you're working on doing writing. Now, in my case, not only because of the fact there's this neat little project, this neat little thing that may come up down the line. Now, for me, the important idea is get these ideas out, get people with the tools to be able to straighten their own life, to be able to turn the tide of the way that society is running. Okay, now I came back to this world for one primary reason, to pass on a simple message to virtually everybody in existence. Okay, and that is that working together, we can make this a better world for most people. Okay, but in order to do that, you've got to have the tools. Now, a couple of the other big projects I'm working on, okay, big books, are a rewrite on the way astrology works. And I will because there are some massive discrepancies that I found in the calculations that Western astrology works with. Okay, massive discrepancies. And one of these days, I'm going to end up doing a video on those discrepancies. I've also run into a number of major discrepancies on numerology. Okay. And even the ones I've looked into, somebody brought to my attention something about numerology, about what most people call numerology. Okay, turns out that when you're working with the numbers from 1 to 9, you're dealing with something called Pythagorean numerology. Okay, now some genius out there, and I'm not going to give names. Now I work with base 12. The number is 1 to 12. There are a number of people, I haven't read their books, but I've seen the calculations they're working with. And they're not using base 12 numerology. What they've done is extended the number base to 12 and still used the same calculations used in base 10 or in base 9 in Pythagorean. Okay. And what I mean by that, just real briefly because it's on the tip of my head. In Pythagorean numerology, you use the numbers from 1 to 9 and then start over at 1. While when you're looking at 2 or 3 digits that you're adding together, you add those numbers up. Okay. And when you add those numbers up, then you break it down. Now, what this one individual in particular did was he adds them up and breaks them down. But that's Pythagorean. Base 12, the way I found it, that doesn't work. And I will go into that in a future vlog. Okay. Absolutely, and I am putting it together because, in my opinion, I look at methods that I've tried, that I've personally experienced and put to use, and that literally thousands of people, depending on the topic, have been handed the information to. So these tools are tried and true methods, these philosophies of life that I live by, as in the 3 karmic laws. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And energy out, energy in. Now, when you're looking at those, okay, take a look at the guidelines that you personally work with. Now, before anybody jumps on that issue of the astrology and the numerology, it's not the interpretation of the numbers that is in question. It's the calculation. Okay, and I'll get to both of those at a later date. Now, don't get me wrong. By no means am I the best of the best. There is somebody out there, there are a lot of people out there that are better than I am. Especially when it comes to the calculations. I am happy to say this little project here, the brainchild that I've got for staying focused on finances. Okay, I've showed it to you lots of times before. Okay, where it says I have legally acquired a minimum of $3,500 by April 30th, 2022, at 1 minute to midnight. I am very pleased to say this number has been just decimated this month. Okay, and then I've got the one for my business underneath. Inner Voice Enterprises has legally generated a minimum of $600 by April 30th, 2022, at 1 minute to midnight. Now that 600 is included in this 35 because of the fact that I've got a home-based business. Now, the nice part about it is I reached all of those. I just checked last night. I've got to do the financial books, right, just to get it all locked in. But when I went over the basic numbers, not only did I get myself up to the bank balances I was aiming at, and get myself to the bank balance, like the bank balances I was aiming at with my primary bank accounts. Okay, as in my try that again. My active account, the one that I have a tendency of putting money into to simply spend. and to go where it needs to. And the one that I put the money into to ensure that my rent is covered, so I don't have to worry about it. Okay, managed to get both of those accounts up. My business account has the balance I was aiming at. Okay, so from here on out, I just start climbing. These tools I work with are the same tools. And here's an interesting heads up for you. Give me half a second. Up here. I walked away. What is that one? When I mentioned I had done a book. This one is still only, I've got a few of these booklets left. Okay, they haven't been turned out and turned into what's going to be put on the market. But I mentioned I had a book telling you that lays out the basics on making money work. Okay, this was the first draft. Okay, like I said, they're small. A lot of the books are just small because here's the thing. When I'm looking at the tools, in case you hadn't noticed, repeating the tools time and again is a good way to remember how to do them. Okay, and in my case, I'm a firm believer that that works. Doesn't matter what the project is, doesn't matter what the skill set is that you're aiming at building. Okay, I watched somebody down at the park a couple of weeks ago that was absolutely brilliant. They had this idea. They wanted, I don't know why. I didn't actually ask why. Because it wasn't really that much of an issue. But they were teaching themselves to walk on a tightrope. Okay. And I mean, they fell off a lot of times, but fortunately they were wise enough. They were using a cargo strap between trees. Okay. Now, the only reason I can see doing that is if you're aiming at getting your balance up and running properly. Now, that's one of those skills I look at and go, way to go. You've done really well with it. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. Okay, for me, there is no way I would be doing that. Okay, and here's why I wouldn't be doing that. Because I got a bad leg, and that kind of stress, I taught myself when I was 50. I decided I was going to be real brilliant and decided to teach myself while I was 50, and when I was 50, in other words, 8 years ago, how to ride on a skateboard. Now my balance has been garbage to start with. Okay. My balance has been garbage for a long time. But in my almighty wisdom, talk about overstated, I decided teaching myself to ride a skateboard just to prove that I could was a good idea. Not necessarily the wisest one, because the dumb move I made was I left these things hanging on my hip. Okay. And when I fell down, and I did that a lot, there was one point where, I don't know if it was this one or the matching key, but one of these keys, I ended up landing on this way. So I had to literally pull it out of my hip. Future note, if you ever decide to learn to skateboard, do not wear keys in your pocket that you're going to land on. This is just not a wise idea. Talk about learning that one the hard way. Okay, fortunately, I didn't hit anything critical, other than my pride, I think. But when you're aiming at doing anything, it is absolutely imperative that you realize it's going to take work. It's going to take some time. Okay. While I was down in that park, there was a gentleman and I'll use the term walking around a little loosely. I did talk to him for a bit because he had a personal trainer with him. But this guy, in my opinion, embodied the idea of personal commitment. Okay. It was just amazing to watch. This guy was over 500 pounds. Okay, because I talked to him to find out just exactly what was up. And he had told me he had tried every diet program that he could think of. And the only one that had worked was getting off his tail feathers with the assistance of a real kind-hearted physical trainer. that took into consideration what his size was. Now, when he said when he started, he was 500 pounds. He'd been out there he'd been doing this for about a year, right? And he had managed, without medication, by simply modifying his diet. Okay, and she didn't even apparently work too much on cutting down the amount he was eating, so much as what? Okay, and then got him working out, and he had dropped in about a year. He dropped almost 50 pounds. Okay, now this is dedication. Okay, there is another individual that I know of that has spent years going after a dream, and I am really happy for this individual. They are reaching that dream now. They should, by all rights, they should make that dream happen within probably this year. Okay, at least that's the way it's looking. Am I going to put anybody's name out? No. Most of them I don't know. The ones I do, it's their job to decide whether they go public with things. I love when I get hit with vertigo. It's always fun. Not. But this is a live recording, meaning that any hiccups that I run into, any sort of twists that happen, that's what comes out. When I get done this video, I will simply go back, double check the date, and post it as is. But I'm going to have to do this. Fortunately, I keep I'm set up right next to the window. So when I get hit with vertigo, I've actually got something that I can get a fan running, so to speak, by just opening the window. And that usually helps. But I will cope with it for the time being. This is just one of those really annoying sides to my life. Okay. Fortunately, that hit at just the right time because I'm just hitting the half-hour mark here. So I will be back again tomorrow. But like I said, today, in roughly 40 minutes, I will be going live on YouTube, okay, to discuss what happens with hybrids once they reach maturity. And I will be back again tomorrow. I'll have a couple other things ready to go. Okay, but until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.